Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series, and you're about to hear one of my Genius Network interviews, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I hope you find it very useful. If you want to find out more information about some of the interviews and resources that can help you in your business, you can go to www.joepolish.com. And we have a Joe Polish Recommends section with all kinds of resources and vendors and services and products that we recommend that can help you in your business. And also for more useful interviews and a whole list of other people that I've interviewed, you can go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks and enjoy the interview.
Hello, this is Joe Polish, president of Piranha Marketing and founder of the Genius Network interview series, and today I'm going to be doing an interview with a fascinating gentleman, Dr. Edward Hallowell, MD. I'm going to refer to you as Ned. Is that okay, Ned?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on this interview. I'm in Tempe, Arizona right now. Where are you at?
I'm just outside of Boston, my home in Arlington, Massachusetts.
And you're there with your wife and your children, 3 children.
I'm there with my wife, 3 children, 2 dogs, and as far as I know, no other animals.
What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to read your bio. This is the only part of the interview that I'm going to be reading because you have such a fascinating, expansive background, and I want all of the listeners knowing just who this individual is that I'm speaking with. And so let me do this, and then anything that I don't mention, please bring it up. Okay, here we go. Edward Hallowell, MD, is a child and adult psychiatrist and the founder of the Hallowell Center for Cognitive and Emotional Health in Sudbury, Massachusetts. He was a member of the faculty of the Harvard Medical School from 1983 to 2004. A graduate of Harvard College and the Tulane School of Medicine, Dr. Hallowell is an expert at offering practical ways to approach some of life's most difficult challenges. He is the co-author of the national bestsellers Driven to Distraction and Answers to Distraction, both of which discuss attention deficit disorder in children and in adults. In addition, he has written books on addressing emotional issues such as the importance of forgiveness, the book Dare to Forgive, issues such as worry and anxiety in the books Worry and When You Worry About the Child You Love, and then the subject of how to raise happy children, and the book is The Childhood Roots of Adult Happiness, and many more. Dr. Hallowell is a frequent speaker on the issues that include ADD, how to lead a healthy life, communication strategies for business, worry, stress management, and the power of connection. He has published in the Harvard Business Review on the topic of the human moment and on the topic of why smart people underperform in the workplace. Dr. Hallowell and co-author Dr. John Rady released their much-awaited new book on ADD, Delivered from Distraction. This book provides a complete and important review of the current state and knowledge about ADD and provides information about how to lead a joyful life with ADD and take advantage of the many wonderful aspects of the ADD mind. As one of the leading psychiatric experts in the country, Dr. Hallowell has appeared on many national television and radio broadcasts, including 60 Minutes, The Jane Pauley Show, 2020, The Today Show, Dateline, Oprah, Good Morning America, NPR, and The View. He is also often interviewed and quoted in publications such as U.S. News and World Report, USA Weekend, Newsweek, The Los Angeles Times, and many other magazines and newspapers. From corporate audiences to parent-teacher workshops, people who listen to Dr. Hallowell come away stimulated, inspired, amused, and always better informed. He's a charismatic speaker, combining the knowledge of a Harvard instructor with the warm, easy manner of an experienced public presenter. Okay, what else did I leave out?
You didn't leave anything out, and it's a real pleasure to be with you, Joe. I love this series that you've developed, and I'm honored to be part of it.
Yeah, thank you so much. And let me give the listener some background. One of your latest books, which is an unbelievably awesome book, is called Crazy Busy. The first hardcover copy of it initially said overstretched, overbooked, and about to snap, strategies for coping in a world gone ad, as an ADD. And I know there's going to be slight changes. There are slight changes on the new version, the paperback version that just came out. But nonetheless, that's what I want to talk about on the subject today is Crazy Busy. And I'm just going to say a couple of things, and I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit.
Okay.
I just want to give the listener a background from my own experience with you. I read your book about a year ago. Ended up Crazy Busy. I ended up sending a copy over to Nightingale Conant, which I have a marketing program with Nightingale, and said, you guys should do a program on this guy, which they recently did. I haven't heard it yet, but they say it's unbelievable, and so I'm just, eagerly awaiting to receive this. And basically, in a nutshell, I said, can you contact Dr. Hallowell and see if, I can maybe set up a Genius Network interview with him, which is what we're going to be doing today. And we ended up connecting and talking on the phone, and we just completely hit it off. And so in a very short period of time, you ended up coming to my 25K group, as I refer to it. I have a coaching group of people that pay $25,000 a person, and you came and presented to this group of 24 individuals in my offices in Tempe, Arizona, all on the subject of crazy busy. And these are people that are very, very successful entrepreneurs. Several people in the group run multi-million-dollar businesses and are very, very successful with hundreds of employees and, just driven, successful entrepreneurs. Because I believe your message of crazy busy is so critical and so important for any successful entrepreneur. And so since that time, we spent 7 hours in a hotel room in New York City just talking about business, about talking about entrepreneurship, about talking about my ADD brain and, my, states of how I think and how to use this interesting brain that I got and that so many entrepreneurs have to be effective, to be happy, and to just to live a more productive life. And you have processes and methods and understanding unlike anyone I've ever been exposed to. So I am really honored to be doing an interview with you and sharing whatever we can about this subject with the listeners. So that's kind of how I wanted to introduce it from my own perspective. And so I guess with the first question that I would ask you is if you could even define the term crazy busy, because you wrote a whole book called Crazy Busy, and what it is, and then, talk about anything contributing to everyone, feeling crazy busy. And that would be a lot of the listeners of Genius Network, which are predominantly entrepreneurs.
Well, it's really a good news, bad news story. I mean, the feeling of being crazy busy can be wonderful, or it can be awful. It can be, the good news is, due to communications technology, and I think we're living in a epical change. I mean, I don't think since the Gutenberg printing press we've seen anything quite like this. And we are able to reach people in ways that we've never been able to reach them before. With the Internet, with Blackberries, with cell phones, the reach is instantaneous and global. And it's awesome. It's incredible. And we're, the more entrepreneurial among us, the more charged up among us are like kids in a candy store. I mean, but an incredibly big candy store, and that's where the problems begin to arise. Your eyes are bigger than your stomach, and the next thing you know, you're trying to do too much. You're overcommitted. You're overavailable. To all of them are good things. You're really excited. I want to do this. I want to do that. Give me some of that. Give me some of this. Give me some of that. I want to start this business, that business. I want to meet this person for lunch and have dinner with that person, and I want to take this vacation, but I want to be working while I'm gone. And the next thing you know, you become overcommitted, overstretched, and you feel you're about to snap. And it's not that you're doing any one thing that you don't like. It's not that you're stuck in a go-nowhere job, sort of the old formula of people who were stressed out. Now, it's that you're going too many places all at once, So it's not a go-nowhere job. It's a go-too-many places, and you just can't keep track of it all. And I sort of compare this kind of mind, to a tin can being surrounded by 100 magnets, 100 powerful magnets, and you turn all those magnets on, and what happens to the tin can? It just spins, because it's being pulled in 100 directions all at once. What you need to do is somehow begin to turn off those magnets, and the problem is for the entrepreneur and for the imaginative, creative, hard-driving person is they don't know what to turn off because they love it all, and so. They're zigging and they're zagging, they're succeeding, but they're also, afraid that they're going to miss something, drop something, and now and then they do, and a disaster occurs, or best a mistake that embarrasses them, or something fails, something breaks down. The need to keep track of things today is exponentially greater than it's ever been in human history, because the human brain has never been able to process as many data points as we're asking it to process today. I mean, when you just think of it just in practical numbers, add up your emails, your cell phones, your fax inputs, your FedExes, your snail mail is the least of your worries. I mean, that's relatively easy to deal with, but all these other electronic inputs, can be positively dizzying if you're not careful. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm in no way a Luddite. I'm not saying, turn back the clock and turn off everything and go back to the early 1980s or something like that. Not at all. I'm saying today's world is a banquet. It's incredible. It's better than life has ever been as long as you learn how to manage it. Because if you don't learn how to manage it, it will manage you. Those 100 magnets will all switch on, and you'll start spinning, going nowhere. So curb your enthusiasm and listen to this interview and let Joe and me walk you through some of the dangers as well as some of the opportunities so that you can take control of modern life, lest it take control of you. And when it takes control of you, you're not operating at your best.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I had read several of your books, not just Crazy Busy, before I ever had spoken with you, before I ever knew you, and they just resonated with me for a couple reasons. One, my life at times absolutely, Crazy Busy completely defines it. How I think, how I feel, even when I have things under control in terms of making money and moving forward and having a wonderful staff and, even in states of accomplishment, there are times where I've like, oh my God, it's just spinning so fast. What do I do with it? So
right.
when I first read your books, absolutely the message resonated. And also one thing I did not mention, I want to mention this early on, is, in terms of top people in the world on the subject of ADD and just who you are. I mean, I want all the listeners to be aware. And, I'm a marketer, so I can, say things that may sound hypey at times. But I asked you, Ned, are you the top ADD, ADHD psychiatrist in the world? And, you don't have any ego whatsoever. You're very, anyone that would ever meet you, you're a very nice guy, and you don't want to be a brag or anything. And you said, well, I've sold more books than anyone, and, you gave me some background. And I said, well, in my book, that would make you the top guy considering how much you've accomplished. You sold over 2 million books. The day you actually came and presented to my group, the 25K group, you were on a 2-hour show with 2020 on the whole subject of worry. And so, you're a very accomplished individual that sees a lot, speaks at conferences to doctors, has been on, you've been on Oprah 4 times. Your message obviously resonates with millions of people. And what I wanted to do is bring it to my listeners just in the subject of Crazy Busy. And sometimes it's dangerous to assume. I will make an assumption here that everything you just talked about to describe the state of Crazy Busy with the 100 magnets, almost everyone that's listening right now will resonate with this and can definitely get tremendous value, not only from an interesting standpoint, but I guarantee that many of my clients, because I talk to them all the time, are in a state of feeling completely out of control. So my objective here in the time that we have is to, talk about how to deal with it. And, give them some tools and some strategies and some recommendations because this is not just about making money. This is about getting your life together and getting a handle on things that, frankly, most people don't have a handle on. So,
sure, I said the two go hand in hand. The making of the money and your health and your relationships. They all get impacted by the crazy busy world, and when one suffers, they all suffer.
Yes, and the greatest thing when I first started talking with you is I was like, wow, this is, I come across some really neat stuff. I meet a lot of interesting people, and I'm in a great position of just what I do that I come across a lot of, processes, technologies, methodologies, and your stuff is some of the most unique and different and valuable that I've come across in a very long time, which is why I've wanted to bring it to my group. Let's talk about the subject of overwhelm.
Sure.
Just because Crazy Busy to me is really, being in an overwhelmed state. So
yes.
When people are in that state of overwhelm, what are some ways, some suggestions for kind of, I guess, rebooting your brain, removing the heavy stress, just dealing with it?
Sure. Well, let me just describe it a little bit first and why you should deal with it. I wrote this article for Harvard Business Review called Overloaded Circuits, subtitle, Why Smart People Underperform. And at what level you get overloaded varies from person to person. Some people can, have 75 magnets, others 50 magnets, but when you reach that point of overload, what happens is you move from one state of mind to another. The first state, the healthy state, where you're at your best, I call C state. because a lot of the adjectives that define it begin with the letter C. Cool, calm, collected, careful, creative, cooperative, concentrated. And then as you get overwhelmed, as you're dealing with too many data points, as you've got one too many obligations, one too many meetings, one too many projects, one too many phone calls, one too many emails, you go into F state. You start to become frantic. You start to become fearful. You start to become furious. You start to want to utter another F word. You just lose that concentrated edge that leads to your success, and you become effectively stupid, as well as obnoxious. You offend people. You make mistakes. You don't complete. You become rigid. You don't listen to feedback. And in that state, you do your worst work, and you make some blunders that, particularly interpersonally, that can take you a year to get out of. So it's worth it. It's really worth it to sort of wise up to this and kind of develop your internal sensors. So you'll say, I'm heading toward F state. I'm starting to lose it. I'm starting to, fly off the handle. I'm starting to make mistakes. I ought to do something about that. Now, the traditional solution that people have used is simply to suck it up and push on. Well, your brain just doesn't respond well to that solution. You may want to. Your ethic of suck it up may say, okay, I'm just going to suck it up and push on. Your brain will be in F state, and you'll start making mistakes, and you'll start getting annoyed with people. As much as you want to push on, your brain won't let you. Your physiology, your neurology, the stuff that I learned about in medical school won't let us do that. We are really limited by biology, by physiology. A computer isn't. See, a computer can just go on in C state indefinitely. But we can't as humans. We can do stuff that computers can't do, but one thing computers can do that we can't do is stay in the same state indefinitely unless the electricity goes off. So as you find yourself getting into that F state, the first thing to do is to learn how to notice it and realize that you are becoming your own worst enemy instead of just pushing on, like a bull in a china shop. Recognize what's going on. And then the next step is to start limiting inputs. In other words, if you possibly can, get off into a room by yourself. If you can't, if you're in a business meeting or something like that, try to screen out stimulus for a minute. Just try to, look out the window, look down at the floor, take a few deep breaths, go in your imagination to your quiet place or some place that you like. For me, it's the beach. I imagine walking the beach. You don't have to get all mystical and meditate or anything. This only takes a matter of seconds. I'm talking about a very brief interlude where you just kind of shut down the inputs. You don't feel data for a few moments. And if you can be in a room by yourself, that's even better. You're basically screening out inputs to give your mind a chance to re-equilibrate so you're not overloaded. It's like, when you flooded the car, you don't keep starting the engine and pumping on the gas. You wait, for a couple of minutes, and then you try starting it up again. The same idea when you start feeling overloaded. Don't keep, pumping the gas and turning on the ignition. Wait a couple of minutes, and that's absolutely crucial. If you can learn to do that, you're going to be way ahead of the game. Now, there's a number of other things you can do depending on where you are and how much time you've got. One of my all-time favorites is simply, if you have at your desk photographs of people and places you love. I have at my desk a mobile that's hanging over my desk of about 25 photographs of my kids, my friends, the places we go on vacation. I have one of Fenway Park because we love to go there. It's where the Red Sox play. And I just sit back and I look up at this mobile and I see all these people and places that I love silently moving above my head and just looking at them, just literally looking at them for, 30 seconds takes me out of F state and back to C state. So try to have at your desk these photographs. Maybe you're not going to have a mobile, but have them on the wall or have them within eyesight. Another real good one, another real good way to bring yourself out of F state back to C state is a quick burst of exercise. You don't have to go to the gym. Just close your door and do 25 push-ups or do 25 jumping jacks or If you're near a stairwell, run up and down stairs a few times. That's a real good one. You know, you may feel silly doing it, but I promise you, it's like pushing the reset button on your brain. Your brain chemistry changes. 3 minutes of brisk exercise positively will change your brain chemistry, and you come back to your computer or the project you were working on or even the meeting you were having, you'll be in a totally different frame of mind. It's amazing what that'll do. And again, these are brief interventions. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to go to Tibet. You don't have to go to church or the synagogue or the ashram or whatever. You know, you can do these things wherever you are, not if you're driving a car, of course. And by the way, a lot of F-state happens in cars and leads to a lot of accidents. If you're driving a car, because I've learned this because I'm someone who can get angry easily in traffic, turn on some music and just say to yourself, don't be a jerk. That's what I say to myself. I mean, literally, keep it short. Don't be a jerk. Just say, you know, is it worth it to chase after that guy who cut me off? And the answer is no, it's not. Do I want to risk my life, risk my future, risk all the hassle of having to take your car in to have it repaired or, you know, pay a ticket? Just say to yourself, don't be a jerk. Turn on some music, and you'll forget about the guy who cut you off that you want to kill at that precise moment.
Right. You know, earlier you're talking about just the F state and you know, getting in arguments and having conflicts. I mean, I would absolutely say there's probably people that destroy their lives, destroy careers, and potentially can even kill themselves or others in the frantic state. You know, someone screaming on a cell phone, driving, not paying attention, or, you know, just
absolutely
communication that just goes completely off because you're just in a frantic state. I mean, from my own experience, there's got to be hundreds of cases of poor decision making that I can think of as a result of being in an F state. And there's a great line that my friend Dan Sullivan says, which is, the more tired I get, the more stupid everyone seems.
Yes, exactly. And you could add, the more angry I get, the more panicked I get, and the more overwhelmed I get, the more stupid everyone seems. By the way, it also is a classic trigger for addictive behavior, and that's a whole another topic. But how many people say, you know, when they're in F state, I really need a drink? I mean, it's like the classic line, I need a drink, as if that's going to help. And you know, so the F state often leads people to drink, to seek out sexual situations, to gamble, to do anything to basically self-medicate, to change their state of mind, and you often get these compulsive addictive behaviors in response to F state.
Yeah, well, I actually will ask you to do a future interview just on the whole subject of that sort of mindset, the addictive behaviors. You know, you said something in the presentation where the extent people will go to not be bored is crazy. And, you know, I mean, what's the difference between a frantic state versus just a completely unsatisfied state? No matter, you either call it boredom or call it you're just not happy with where you're at, and that leads you to this frantic F state. I mean, what's the distinction that you?
Well, both are dangerous. The distinction I like to make is you can be very busy and very productive. You can be in C state and be doing a lot. So I'm not saying to people you have to slow down. I'm not saying to people you have to eliminate, you know, what you love to do, as long as you can handle it, as long as you can stay in C state. But what a lot of people feel, and the reason they take on so much, is they feel a chronic state of dissatisfaction. They have less of an ability to take pleasure in the ordinary aspects of life than other people do. And people speculate that their dopamine system is different, that some people have called it the reward deficiency syndrome, that they're just born with their pleasure set at a lower level. So they have to resort to more extraordinary measures to feel the ordinary pleasure that others, you know, without resorting to extraordinary measures. So it's like, you know, these people have an itch that they can't quite scratch. And that itch is not going to go away. They're not going to get rid of the itch. What they need to do is find adaptive ways of scratching it. Now, having a creative outlet, like developing a business, is a wonderfully adaptive way of scratching it. Taking on too much so that you become crazy busy is a maladaptive way of scratching it. You get into F state, and that puts you at danger. Physical exercise is an adaptive way of scratching it. Going out and getting drunk is a maladaptive way of scratching it. And you can just see, you can make a list of adaptive and maladaptive ways of scratching the itch. And in fact, that's a good idea to do. You're not going to get rid of the itch. What you want to do is have handy and readily available adaptive ways of scratching it. Talking to another person is an adaptive way of scratching it. Getting in a fight with another person is a maladaptive way of scratching it. And a lot of people do that, by the way. They, without knowing it, they create conflict because conflict is engrossing. Conflict scratches the itch. So they pick fights with people. And they don't realize what they're really doing is self-medicating. They're scratching their itch.
Interesting. Yeah, part of so much of what you write about is the power of connection and just being connected with people, which I believe is the strength of one of the most amazing, movements in the world, which is 12-step programs.
Right.
The whole thing is built around connections with other human beings. And so I believe, from a frantic standpoint, you have a lot of people that are just spinning in isolation. I mean, they're just not connected to anything except the stress and the overwhelm.
Right. And that's one of the unrecognized paradoxes of modern life, this feeling of being incredibly connected electronically, but disconnected interpersonally. And people don't know, gee, why am I feeling dissatisfied? Well, my explanation is you're suffering from a different kind of vitamin C deficiency. It's not ascorbic acid, the usual vitamin C, it's vitamin Connect. You don't get enough human contact. And we need that physiologically, biologically. We need to make the eye contact with a human being. We need to rub up against somebody. We need to feel the presence of someone we like, literally physical presence. Now you don't need it constantly, of course. We can go for long periods of time without that, and we can simply think of them, and that does the job. But you need more than most people get. You need doses of the other vitamin C, vitamin Connect. A high five, a pat on the back, a smile, a laugh. Those are not luxuries. Those are necessities. And you want to make sure you build them into your life. It's another way of staying out of F state. Have a human moment. Don't email the person in the cubicle next to you. Go speak to them. Don't just rely on your telephone. Now and then have lunch with the person. Don't just do your business virtually. Now and then sit down and talk face to face. You don't have to do it all the time. The great freeing force of technology is awesome. But watch out for taking it too far, doing that exclusively and never having a human moment.
Yeah, one of the biggest complaints that I hear from, my clients, from people that I know, that I experience myself is email. Electronic communication, like
right.
You just said, we're so connected and simultaneously becoming so disconnected. And I don't know the exact study. Dan Sullivan actually told me about it. They did a a big study back in 1995 about, in America, how many people had, what their friendships were like. And at the time, 10% of the survey said that they did not have one close personal friend. Mm-hmm. And 10 years later, in 2005, they ended up doing the same study, and at that point found that 25% of the people in the survey said that they did not have one single friend. And much of the attributing the lack of, connections was, the electronics. People are connected by mobile phones. They're connected by the Internet, but they don't go out and have what you refer to as the human moment.
Right, exactly. And that number is going up. And this has been documented by any number of studies. A guy at Harvard called Robert Putnam wrote a book, about 10 years ago called Bowling Alone. He researched it. He's a sociologist, and one of the statistics was more people are bowling than ever before, but participation in teams has gone way down. They're bowling alone. And that was sort of his metaphor for modern life. And if it was true 10 years ago, it's even truer today. Another researcher at Harvard Medical School has shown the feeling of being isolated is as much of a risk factor for early death as cigarette smoking. Lisa Berkman is her name, and she did this study, and that study's now been replicated a dozen times. So, we used to think of connecting as sort of touchy-feely, frill, what you do in your spare time, and it's not really bottom line relevant. Well, it is absolutely bottom line relevant. Because when you think of it, what does your bottom line depend on more than anything else? It depends on your brain power. And your brain suffers if you don't feel connected, if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel in C state. Your brain suffers. You become, far less effective. So this is not something to say, oh, yeah, well, I'll get around to that someday. This is as important as sleep, exercise, diet, creating this connected atmosphere where you don't feel afraid, where you don't feel angry, where you don't feel you're about to, lose it. That will benefit your business big time, probably more than any single factor in terms of boosting your brain power.
Well, and we've got a lot of people that are listening to Genius Network that are just amazing entrepreneurs. They create enormous value for people.
Yes.
They have high integrity. They make things happen. They're people that make things happen.
Yes.
And so many of them just are suffering as a result of being in the F state and just being completely overwhelmed. So what I'd like to do, just because I wasn't even really planning on covering this with you, I just, based on what you said, though, I think it would be so useful. You have a lot of terminology in your book, Crazy Busy, that people, you have all these terms you come up with, and I have the book in front of me. And can I go through a list with you about the terms and have you kind of describe them? Because I think, I think everyone listening, just as you describe these and I ask them of you, Ned, I'd like everyone listening to just kind of sit and say, okay, do I do this? Do I not do this? Do I know someone that I think it'll really help you kind of get a perspective on Crazy Busy. Okay, you have a term called screen sucking.
Yes.
What is that?
And one of the fun things I had in writing this book was making up these words because they're a new phenomenon and we needed a term to cover it. Screen sucking is where you say to yourself, I'm going to go online and check my email, take a few minutes, and 2 hours later, you're still there. You're still glomped onto your screen, mindlessly sending and receiving messages, surfing the net. You're not even aware of the passage of time. There's a curious kind of hypnotic trance that develops between people and a screen, particularly when they're online doing email or surfing the net. Probably because it's interactive, unlike a television. It's interactive, and so it draws you in and kind of creates a world where you forget where you are and what time it is. And it's a way that people waste a lot of time. People say, I don't know where the time went. Well, one place it goes is screen sucking. And you'd be amazed if you actually monitored your time through the day. You'd be amazed how much time you really give away without meaning to screens, and another classic place is cell phone. So I'm not saying get rid of them. My God, I use them all the time. My life depends on them. But just beware of how much time you're spending either screen sucking or cell phone sucking.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, I know a lot of people that are absolutely, that is their whole life. It's just sitting in front of a computer screen like all day long. And as you spoke about at our group, to many of the people there, just that could become such a form of isolation and escapism that it's definitely something to look at. All right, so another term, tail dogging. What does tail dogging mean?
Well, this is another thing that you see. I see it with parents. I see it with business people, where the tail is wagging the dog, where you feel that because other people are frantic and rushing around, you think, well, that must be the way to go. It must be a sign of success to be crazy busy. It's almost like a status symbol. So I better take on too much and make myself crazy busy too, and at the end of the day collapse into bed and not have time to say hello to your friends or make love or do the things that people ought to do. You're trying to keep up with the Joneses. You're trying to do what other people are doing instead of doing what really makes sense. Watch out for that one. It's a powerful one.
Frazzing. What's frazzing mean?
Well, frazzing is my word for multitasking ineffectively. Multitasking, again, with these electronic devices, as the airlines call them, you are able to sort of have your email in front of you, have a TV screen, be on the telephone, and maybe, your assistant is sitting over there and you're motioning her to do things as well. So you can be attending to 4 or 5 tasks and people call that multitasking. Well, actually, the human brain can only attend to one task at a time. And so what you're really doing when you're multitasking is you're attending to several tasks one after the next in rapid succession. And that doesn't mean you're attending to them simultaneously. You can't. What you can do is attend to them in rapid succession one after the next. That tends to diminish your efficiency because you're not giving full attention to anything. Now, if all of the tasks are boring, if all of the tasks are take very few neurons, that's fine to do. In fact, multitasking is a way of making boring tasks more interesting because you're having to juggle them. But if any of those tasks really requires your full attention, frazzing is a real bad idea. My wife, who's a therapist, had a client, told her the following story that I just think is a wonderful story. He's a lawyer, a very high-powered lawyer. And he was at a meeting of other lawyers in Boston. They were negotiating a deal. And they negotiated the deal, and they got back together a month later, and these other lawyers said to my wife's client, how in the world did you get us to agree to this deal? We gave you the ranch. I mean, what did you have us on drugs? And he said, well, no, not drugs exactly, but I was the only one in the room without a Blackberry. And as we were negotiating the deal, all of you were checking your Blackberries, and I was the only one who was paying full attention to the deal. And that's why I got this great deal for myself, my client. And, that's what happens. You think you're giving full attention, but you're not when you're frazzing. A part of your mind is elsewhere. There have been studies that show that talking on your cell phone while you're driving is more dangerous than if you've had 2 drinks in terms of impaired performance as a driver. So people like to think that I can do it and it's so great. Well, just like when you're drinking, you think, I'm just fine. When you're multitasking, you are giving away efficiency without meaning to.
What an interesting story, too, about the lawyer. That is really funny.
Yeah.
And Well, there you go. I interviewed Julie Morgenstern in the past. She's an organizational expert. And, she's very big on do not multitask.
Yes.
Your attention can only be on one thing at one time. My friend Marie Forleo, who I've interviewed also, she's the same thing. So, bright people that deal with it all the time. And certainly, there you go. Frazzing. Okay, this one, I love this one because I can completely relate to this. I've hit myself with what you call doom darts.
Yes, doom darts, again, it's a function of the multiple details we have to keep track of, and it's so hard to do. So you sort of think, well, you're driving home, you've put the office to bed, or you think you've got control of the world, or you're heading off on vacation. You've taken care of everything, every client, every obligation, you've got coverage for everything, and you're all set. And then, like a dart from doom, something you've forgotten about just penetrates your consciousness, and it's like this poison. You're suddenly, your head is swimming. You've forgotten about it. How could you have forgotten about it? What are you going to do about it? And it is this dart from doom. And it's just the problem is when you take on too much, it's almost inevitable that you'll forget something. Some detail will slip through the cracks, and that's why it's important to have some sort of system to prevent that from happening.
Gotcha. Okay, now this one, Kudzu. Did I pronounce that right?
You got it right. Kudzu. Kudzu is a nasty weed that was imported from Southeast Asia. If you live in the Atlanta area, you know about it well. It was brought in as a ground cover. The problem is it's too good of a ground cover. It just spreads and it takes over whole neighborhoods, and it sends down these long roots like these nasty pink-looking roots that go down 50, 100 feet. So it's all but impossible to get rid of. And I think of all the junk, the clutter that we collect and put in piles. It's like kudzu. You go into offices, you just see it's covered with kudzu, and you clean up the office and it comes right back again. All these piles of journals and books and memos, and not to mention the cyber piles. All these things you've got in your hard drive that you have no idea what they are. Then they're just filling it up. Kudzu, clutter, that just, you could take the average house and bring a dump truck to it and fill that dump truck, and the house would just sort of heave a sigh of relief. So in this information age, we're just saturated with the journals and papers and stuff that we collect.
Yeah, I love the electronic kudzu. I mean, that's just,
yes.
You're so right. Well, a great term. Okay, next one is info addicts.
People who just, without knowing it, they've got to get their fix. I mean, these are the people who watch CNN round the clock. They just, I've never understood what the great appeal of the scoop is, and that's been around for as long as there have been newspapers. What does it matter if you're the first one to get the information? What does it matter if you get it a half an hour later? I mean, it's just this kind of this turn on that you want it now, and it's somehow exciting to be the first one to know that there was a fire on Fifth Avenue, or the first one to know that even though it has doesn't give you really an advantage. I mean, sometimes being the first to know does give you an advantage, but most of the time it doesn't. And also not only being the first to know, but just constantly wanting new information, constantly wanting news, constantly wanting data, constantly, the people who in the stock market who sit there glued to their Bloombergs just watching the fluctuation of a stock price, even though that's a really bad way to invest. You're supposed to make a decision and forget about the stock for a while, and instead people buy a stock and then they start watching it, minute to minute. They're info addicts. They're not doing anything with the information, or often they're doing bad things with the information. They just want the stimulation of watching this information stream by them. See, and what happens also as you become addicted to information, what you don't do is think about that information. What you don't do, and thinking is a disappearing art. Because people are so busy and you've become such data processors, all you do is gather and process data, but you don't do anything with it. You don't synthesize it. You don't turn it into something useful. You just gather more data and process more data, and you say, I'm being very productive. I'm gathering data. I'm watching my stock price. I'm reading this journal. But you're not being productive. You're just processing data. You're an info addict. And it's really a way of avoiding the hard work of the brain, which is thinking. Thinking hurts. And so people fool themselves into believing that being busy is a substitute for thinking. And it isn't. The productive people always think, at least some fraction of their day they spend in thought and trying to do something with the data that they've gathered.
Yeah, what's funny is when I was in New York recently on the same trip that me and you, we ended up meeting up in New York when I was up there for 6 days, and I'm friends with the publishers of Bottom Line Personal. It's a company called Boardroom Inc., and they publish Bottom Line Personal, which is the largest consumer newsletter in the world, and they have a whole series of different newsletters on different subjects. And
they're a great company. They've had me on them a couple of times. They're wonderful people.
Oh yeah, they're awesome, and they have they work with just so much amount of data because they're in the business of publishing, and it's not influenced by advertising, so they have no advertising in their publications.
Right.
And Marty Edelston, who's the founder, he has a big sign in his office that says "Think."
Yeah.
And one of his biggest things is you just got to think. And the late Peter Drucker said that there's nothing more useless than doing really well that which need not be done at all. And
that's great.
What you were just saying about you got to know what's on the news. It's like I don't watch that much television, and I really don't I don't have a lot of expansive world knowledge on a lot of things, and I'm not a sports fan all that much. I mean, that's a whole other story of a bad experience with a little league coach that kind of ruined my liking of sports per se. But nonetheless, the point is I look at a lot of things that people really think are really important, and I'm like, well, important to what?
Right.
I mean, so great term, definitely worth looking at. Now, this one I think is just hysterical, the name that you came up with this one, Mega Octopus.
Yeah, the Mega Octopus. It's like not just your ordinary 8-tentacled octopus, but a Mega Octopus, and that's modern life. It's like everywhere you look, there's a tentacle trying to get its suction cup on you. You've got all these people want your attention. They want your eyeballs. They want your this committee wants you. This project wants you. This person wants to meet you for lunch. This person has a new thing they want you to do. You not to mention your friends, your family, me as an ADD expert, every time I turn around, someone's got a friend that they want a favor. They want me to, fix them or something, which I'm glad I can be useful. But there comes a time where all these requests, all these demands, all these tentacles can absolutely tie you up so that you can't be working on what you want to be working on. The Mega Octopus of modern life has been, and the reason it's a Mega Octopus today as opposed to a mere octopus 25 years ago is communications technology has just made us all so available. And, unless we set some limits on it, and unless we do what I think is the crucial operation of learning to prioritize and learning to say no.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that octopus will just tie you up all day.
Very true. Well, these are great terms, and I mean, what I'd recommend to the listeners, read Ned's book, Crazy Busy. It's fabulous. You can get a more expanded elaboration on all of these subjects, but I wanted to have you kind of cover them because I think that they're great ways of defining problems, and secondly, I wanted to have everyone out there being aware of this. Now, so a couple of things could be happening in the minds of all of my listeners right now. They could be like, yeah, this is really cool. I've got a handle on understanding it, and that's the first step of improving it. The second is like, oh, my God, I mean, I'm feeling nuts now. So to any stressed out, overwhelmed business owner listening to this interview right now, if they could do anything right now to help themselves get more centered. I mean, you've already given great suggestions already. What other further advice would you give them to act on, like right now?
Well, right now, I would say sit back in your chair, wherever you are, or if you're driving, don't sit back, pay attention to the road. But I want to tell you one important fact that you might not believe at first, because when I present this to audiences of all kinds, they always say, I agree with everything you said, except I have no choice. My lifestyle demands that I be this way. My spouse demands it. My boss demands it. My kids demand it. I demand it. I demand the most out of myself. I want to do more than anybody. And my answer is you have more control than you think. And the big myth is that you don't have control, that you have to be crazy busy, that you have to be in F state in order to keep up with modern life. And the answer is that is simply not true. Warren Buffett doesn't even have a computer on his desk. He's done okay. Or another story, someone sort of more at the level the rest of us are. I went out to the Gates Foundation some months ago to give a talk, and the woman who brought me there had come over to Gates from Starbucks, and she said, when I was at Starbucks, I had a Blackberry, and she said that was the key to my success. I'm a mom with a high-powered career, and the only way I could do both was to get really adept at my Blackberry. And she said I got so good at it, I could be using my Blackberry with one hand, my right hand, and be stirring macaroni and cheese for dinner for the kids with my left hand. And she said this is how I was able to be a high-powered executive and a mom. When I got to Starbucks, they said, we want you to get rid of that Blackberry. And I said, what? You can't ask me to do that. That's the key to my success. I can't operate without it. They said, we want you to get rid of it. She said, all right, but I won't be responsible for what happens, and she got rid of it. And sure enough, the first week she was crazy. She was like in withdrawal. She kept looking for it, reaching for it, dreaming about it, But the second week, something quite unexpected happened. She found, first of all, she felt a lot calmer than she'd felt in a long time, and she was getting more work done. And see, that's what's so interesting. Essentially, she had given away control of her time and her brain to the Blackberry. And by taking control back and getting rid of the Blackberry, and by the way, I'm not saying get rid of your Blackberries. If you use them right, they're great. But she was not using it right. She was in thrall of it. It was using her. She wasn't using it. And there are any number of ways in which, if you look at your life, you can see how you've given away control. You have allowed yourself to be manipulated by the Mega Octopus. You've allowed yourself to, another one of my terms that I use is leeches. There are a lot of leeches out there. There are people or projects that waste your time, that you just stay involved with out of guilt.
Well, elaborate on that. Leeches and Lilies, because it's a great conversation, and I think it'd be really worth mentioning here.
Sure. Without meaning to, most people allow leeches into their lives, and leeches are simply a person or a project, either one, that's going nowhere. A relationship that makes you feel bad, bummed out, or a project that, you've tried every which way to make it work and it just isn't, and yet you keep at it out of a sense of duty or determination or guilt, or, you think, well, I don't want to quit, I don't want to give up, and those are all noble sentiments, and, it's nice to be a good friend even to people who are not so good back to you, but there comes a time where, particularly these days, where your time and energy are so valuable that you really have got to say no. Okay, this is a leech. I'm going to get away from you. You don't have to be cruel about it, but you just don't spend time with that person, and you back off that committee, or you say, I'm going to not attend to this project anymore. Maybe I'll revive it in a few years, but I'm going to take a break from it. It's going nowhere. What that does, not only does it free you from the sort of the down influence that these leeches have, but it gives you new energy and new time to cultivate your lilies. Now, lilies are people or projects that make you feel good. They may take a lot of time, they may take a lot of hard work, but they're fulfilling. They're going somewhere. They're satisfying. They're exciting. You look forward to talking to that person, or you look forward to working on that project. What you want to do is spend most of your time every day with lilies. May take, like I say, may take a lot of work, may be very difficult, but you feel good about them. Inside, you feel good about them. You look forward to them. And try to spend as little time as possible with leeches, people or projects you just kind of dread interacting with.
Yeah, that's great. And it's a positive way to actually approach your day, approach your life. My friend Dan Sullivan, the founder of Strategic Coach, he has a great saying, which is M equals O minus C. So the letter M equals O as in M as in mess, O as in obligation, and C as in commitment. And a mess in your life is when you have an obligation minus a commitment. And so a leech to me is kind of a mess. It's like, well, I don't want to hang out with this person, whatever. And, your approach, I've read a bazillion. I mean, you've been to my office. You've seen how many books I have. I have literally hundreds of books, and many of them in business topics and self-help and betterment and all that. And so much of what you focus on is a strength-based approach versus so many books are like, well, here's what's wrong with you and how you're all screwed up, and, here's all the ways to fix it, where it's like, okay, here's what's right with you, and here's how to improve it. Could you describe kind of that whole process and that state of being focusing on your strength and improving it, because that simultaneously will help the areas where you're not so great?
Absolutely. I mean, I think in general as a psychiatrist, psychiatry has really missed the boat on this. I think we take a pathology-based approach to treatment. Well, what I take is just the opposite. I look for a person's talents, interests, and strengths, and I think everybody ought to do that. By the way, the business world is coming around to this much more than the medical world. Marcus Buckingham and the Gallup Foundation with these wonderful books, First Find Your Strengths and all of that. It's all about this, and it just makes common sense. People do better doing what they like and what they're good at than doing what they don't like and what they're bad at. As my daughter would say, well, duh, Dad, But, when you're in school, you have to try to get good at what you're bad at, because you're not good at anything to start off with, or not many things. But there comes an age, I don't know, somewhere in your 20s, where you ought to sort of take stock. What do I like? What am I good at? What do I want to get better at? And put your energy there and start delegating the rest. And we live in a world where learning how to delegate is crucial. So instead of trying to get really good at what you're bad at, and a lot of people do that, it's amazing, or go into treatment to get over, all these shortcomings, put most of your energy into cultivating and developing what you're good at. Like I said, your lilies, well, the lilies within you as well. And you'll find that they crowd out the leeches. As you get stronger, as you get more confident, more powerful, more productive, you won't nearly be as concerned about the leeches, about your deficiencies, about your shortcomings, as you otherwise would be. If you just focus on them, then it's depressing. Who wants to live a day, getting remediation all the time? So I'm a big believer in a strength-based approach to life. Go with what you're good at. Go with what you like. That isn't to say you don't work hard, but the fact of the matter is we're more inclined to work really hard at stuff that's going somewhere. It's the stuff that's paying us back, that's growing, that's turning into something. And if it's not turning into anything and you've given it your best shot, go to something else. This thing about never give up. I know Winston Churchill said it, but and it's good to not quit. But on the other hand, sometimes it's better to put your precious energy in, where it's paying off as opposed to where it isn't paying off.
You've got such a unique approach on just, I think in a lot of ways it's completely different than anything else that has been put out there about productivity for entrepreneurism. And what I'd like you to talk about, one of the last things I'd like you to share in this interview is just the whole subject of rhythm, the whole concept of getting in your rhythm, because you talk a little bit about time management and how many of the systems just simply don't work for you, but there's this whole concept of finding your rhythm, and I think that'd be so valuable for our listeners to hear.
Yes. Well, rhythm is my word for sort of getting your life into a pace where it kind of rolls along smoothly. I make the analogy, a lot of people are driving on square wheels. It takes a lot of work, and they're every rotation of the wheel, just takes and it's, they get there, but my gosh, does it take a lot of work? Does it take a lot? And they're so hardworking, they're, willing to do it. By the way, another one of the great myths that people subscribe to, entrepreneurs and all of us were raised on it, hard work. Well, hard work's great. I'm not saying anything against it, but my gosh, it's not enough. And you want to get round wheels. Don't just use hard work. I mean, if hard work were enough, I could play center field for the Red Sox. But you got to be smart in where you put your hard work. And you want to get round wheels, and that's what I mean by rhythm. You want to try to cut out of your day the leeches. You want to try to cut out of your business plan the stuff that when you just think about it, you feel sick inside. Delegate that. Bring in an expert. Hire a consultant. I know money's not endless, but to get your wheels rounded, it's well worth it. And then, you say, well, this other stuff is easy. I shouldn't spend much time doing that. Not at all. If it's easy, that's round wheels. So you can go. You probably, if you're like most people, you undervalue what comes easy to you. You shouldn't undervalue it. The fact that it comes easy to you means you're driving on round wheels. So try to get your day into a state where you don't have many places where you feel, oh, now I'm on square wheels. Try to get your day where it's rolling smoothly, so you can go fast and have the biggest payoff for every calorie of effort that you put in.
Yeah, I think why that resonates with me so much is because, in the marketing world, people come to me for, ELF systems, what I refer to as ELF marketing, right. Easy, lucrative, and fun. And right. the point is, when they're marketing, I show people how to get off the square wheels and to use round wheels so that it actually not only is effective, but it's enjoyable to do, and it's fun to do, and you can get it rolling, and it keeps rolling.
And I love that concept because, easy, lucrative, and fun, because a lot of people think, what do you mean? It can't be that way. You must be cheating, or, I'm supposed to suffer. It's supposed to hurt. I was raised to believe that. And, see, I think there's a distinction to be made between necessary suffering and unnecessary suffering. Necessary suffering is, like the suffering it takes to think. It does hurt, but if it's in the service of something you're really into and you're really interested in, then you want to put up with it. It's like an athlete who wants to train hard because, he likes the results he's getting. The unnecessary suffering is suffering that, that's driving on square wheels, where you're doing something you're bad at that you really ought to delegate to someone else, or when you're interacting with a leech, a partner or an associate who's just a leech, who's just, bringing you down all the time. Get rid of those, get off those square wheels, so that your business can sing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And so this is great. This is great. There's so much more that I would love to share with you. However, we're limited on time. At the time of this interview, we've talked about you speaking at my upcoming super conference this year. And you're pretty sure you'll be able to make the dates. And
absolutely. It's in my book, and I'm looking forward to it. Wouldn't miss it for the world.
Wonderful. So anyone that wants information about that, go to joepolish.com and you can find out details there. And also we've talked about taking the whole process of rhythm and crazy busy and sharing, this whole process with people. So this is one of the new people that I've met recently that I want to help develop things specifically for my clients, because I think this is more than just an interesting conversation. I think this absolutely will transform people's lives, and it's so valuable. And I see the destruction and the devastation day in, day out. I've seen, and I, thankfully, and I'm so grateful this, I have a pretty good life. I've worked really hard and developed things that, in the past I thought could never be accomplished, and once I've put these systems in place, they're easy to maintain. I've built, a lot of great things, and I have a lot of opportunities available to me. And I think just from a doing the right thing standpoint, I believe what you know and understand inside out, and that you can share with entrepreneurs can be so transformative. Share a story of someone that, be it whoever you could speak of, anonymously if you need to. Could you maybe give an example of a success story of a client or a patient or anyone who came to you in a state of being crazy busy, and what effect it had after implementing, the strategies, the processes that you know and teach?
So many stories, but I can think of a lawyer who came in who was just feeling totally overwhelmed and just dreaded going to work every day. He was a senior partner at a big firm, so he was doing very, very well, but he hated it. He just and he thought he should change careers. And I said, well, before you do that, you've worked hard to get to where you are. Why don't we just look at how you're running your day? And as we began to build in more human moments, he said, I don't have time for that. I say, what do you mean you don't have time for it? You're ready to quit your job. We got to make some changes here. And as he began to kind of make time for lunch with a friend, for exercise, for interventions that would take him out of F state and into C state, lo and behold, he says, God, I'm glad I didn't give up being a lawyer. I love being a lawyer. What I hated was F state. I didn't realize that it was F state. I just thought the law, had become so nasty that I shouldn't be a lawyer anymore. But what really had become nasty was my own brain. I was in F state most of the time. And a few little adjustments in terms of use of time and what you do to get out of F state, he says, thank you so much. I didn't throw away this great career, and I love the law. What I hate is F state. And I think for a lot of people at work, that's what they hate. Then they say, I hate my job, I should quit my job or change my career. You really don't need to do anything that drastic. By the way, same thing with relationships. A lot of people say, well, I got to get out of this relationship. And it's not the relationship, it's the state of mind you're in. And if we would spend more time kind of taking care of the state of mind we're in, then what we're doing, we could enjoy a whole lot more.
Yeah. Well, you've seen as a psychiatrist as having a very successful practice out of all the people that you've come across. I'm actually asking a kind of a loaded question. I know the answer to this, but is it possible for someone that's out there feeling completely, drowning in information, feeling completely crazy busy? It is possible to transform the world.
Totally possible. But you won't believe it. See, that's the thing. When the person listening right now, if they're really drowning, they won't believe it. They'll say, you're just saying that, you want to sell a book or you want to sell this program and you're giving me false hope and you don't know my situation and for me it's impossible and I've painted myself into a corner. And, well, first of all, you wouldn't be listening to this if you didn't have a teeny little bit of hope. And you gotta build on that. And the best way to do that is to talk to somebody. It's very hard to do it alone. So, and who that somebody to talk to, well, depends upon what your situation is. A consultant, a friend, someone else who's in business who's enjoying it, a coach. You can always call me and have a telephone appointment. I'm happy to do that. But somebody who can kind of give you some fresh energy, some fresh ideas, a new look, help you take back control, help you demagnetize some of those magnets, and have modern life start working for you instead of you feeling like you're a slave to all your obligations.
Yeah, well, what I would like to put out there to the listeners, when I did the recent Ultimate Marketing Brainstorm group that we have here, which we actually refer to as the Genius Network Brainstorm group, I started the day saying that I believe, the reason that you're all here is for a couple of things. And I said something that I first heard an author by the name of Poe Bronson say when I went and saw him at a small bookstore. Mm-hmm. And he's a guy that's, written books. He's done a lot of interviews with people and things. And he said, what you want is you want more out of, and I actually asked everyone to scream this, so since we're on an interview, it'll sound kind of weird if I scream. But I said, we all want more woo, and we want less in our life. So more woo, less and spelled ARGGGG, exclamation point, or woo spelled WHOOO, whatever. Right. But I want everyone to kind of think about it with this. I mean, with Crazy Busy, with all of your work, Ned, all of your books. I mean, when I read them, when I listen to you, when I talk to you, I feel more woo. And when you presented to my group, they felt this pressure lift. And we're talking about very successful, accomplished individuals, people that could afford to be in a room and pay $25,000 a person, which is not every business owner. For some people, they, can even fathom doing things like that. And even with the most successful people, they have the pressure, they have the craziness, and some at extreme states. But people across, this is something that I think absolutely can change the world. So my recommendation to the listeners is not only read Ned's book, that's a starting point, but give a copy to anyone that you care about that you know is in a state like this. If you have children, you've written wonderful books for children. Just rattle off some of the subject matters that you've written books about that could be helpful to the listeners, and then we'll kind of wrap up.
Well, sure. Dare to Forgive. If you're sort of living with chronic anger and resentment, it's a practical way to get rid of that anger and resentment. And boy, anger and resentment is one way to make yourself drive on square wheels all day. Get past that. If you're a parent, the Childhood Roots of Adult Happiness really does give you a game plan for raising kids who will be the kind of kids you want them to be, happy, productive, responsible, and will free you from a lot of the mistakes that people make these days of, kind of flogging their kids to get into Harvard and Yale and Princeton, and even though there's no correlation between doing that and the kind of life you lead. Another book that I wrote about worry, if you're a big-time worrier, the name of the book is simply Worry, and it gives practical tips that anyone can use to bring worry from the toxic level to the controllable level. You don't want to get rid of worry totally. We have a word for that. It's called denial. And then, of course, my ADD books, Delivered from Distraction, being the most recent and the most up-to-date. But I write a lot of books because I'm interested in a lot of things, and I try to make them practical, so that you can use them in your life and try to make things better.
Well, you're a great author. You're a great writer. Your methods are simple. They're easy to understand. They're very applicable to everyone. Business owners will get tremendous value out of I believe all your books. And I'm going through everything that you have right now because it's such a fascinating subject to me, because you're such a fascinating individual to me. And so we've had conversations about, really taking what you know and developing it in ways that we could just better share it with entrepreneurs. And I hope that I did it justice here for all my listeners by interviewing you today and giving them access to your wisdom. Because I believe, we talk about data inputs. I believe that there's a big difference between data and wisdom. Data is just a lot of stuff. Wisdom is knowing how to organize it, how to use it, and how to make it applicable in your life. And I believe that, to go back to the more woo and less I believe they can find that with you and through you. So I'm going to make an invitation to my listeners. I do a lot of interviews, and in this particular interview, I'd really would appreciate your feedback. You can email us at support@joepolish.com. You can find us online on our websites. But I want to get your feedback. What do you think of this subject? Did you like this interview? Because if the feedback is a lot, then I will go back and ask Ned to do not only another interview, but maybe even develop some products and things that we can share with the audience and the group, because I believe this is something that can absolutely transform the way that you live and your happiness in all levels, financially, relationships with your children, everything. Ned, any famous last words? Anything else we didn't cover that you'd like to?
No,
mention?
just thank you. It's a pleasure, and you're such a dynamic interviewer and guy. I've enjoyed this. I hope it's been useful to your listeners, and I hope it's the first of many projects we do together. You're a definite lily in my life, Joe.
Thank you, and likewise. And actually, I know this is going to be, because when I feel really good after an interview, I know that it's really great stuff. And I mean, just talking with you about it is wonderful. And so I very much appreciate you taking the time to do this. I think this is great stuff. And so to all of our clients, hoping you have a wonderful day. Go out and cultivate some lilies right now. Get a copy of Ned's book. Websites, Ned, if they want to get a hold of you on the websites, how do they actually find out more information about you?
My website is drhallowell.com, Dr Hallowell, HALLOWELL.com. I also have another one called crazybusylife.com.
Crazy Busy Life and drhallowell.com.
Right.
Go get his book, Crazy Busy, immediately. Read it. You'll love it. It's also available on the audio version, too. And until next time, I wish you a very wonderful day. And Ned, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.
Hello, this is Joe Polish. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to this interview. I hope you found it very useful. Please give me your feedback on all of the interviews that you listen to. I'd love to hear your feedback so we can always deliver a great program for you. Our website is www.joepolish.com, and we also have a Joe Polish Recommends section, so you can take a lot of the ideas and concepts that you hear on my Genius Network interview series and apply them to your business and find vendors and resources. You can go to joepolish.com to find that information and click on the Joe Polish Recommends section. And also, if you would like to find out about more interviews and invest in more useful Genius Network series interviews, go to www.geniusnetwork.com. Thanks, and eat your competition alive.